This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Hello, I'm Kiran. Welcome to the demo. Thank you, everyone, for joining on a Saturday morning or Friday evening if you're in the other side of the world. Okay, so to begin with, let me start about myself. I have about 10 years of experience in DevOps and site reliability engineering roles. I'm very much passionate about technology and also teaching. I love watching movies and occasionally read books. That's the personal side of me. And coming to the technological aspects, I am very interested in container orchestration. You might have heard about Docker and Kubernetes, and also public cloud. I worked both on AWS, Azure, and partially on DigitalOcean. Um, so yeah, and very much interested in automation. And I like FOSS, free and open source software, and Linux. So that's about me in short. Okay, before we get started, let me lay some ground rules. I would request everyone to stay on mute unless you have a specific question. Okay, and maybe stay attentive throughout the session. Of course, that's that's the expectation. And next thing is, it's not like I have a separate Q&A session. I mean, I do have a Q&A session at the end, but you're free to interrupt me whenever you think you have a question. Whenever you have a question, or whenever you think something is not really clear to you, please interrupt me and ask me. I don't mind. Yeah, that's the second rule. And yeah, let's respect the speaker. If someone else is speaking, let's wait for our turn. I know we all do that, but yeah, just a reminder. Okay, and please promise to please promise to be participative and ask me questions and share your comments and thoughts. All right, moving on. Okay, so obviously you are all here to learn something. So without any further delay, let's get started with what's covered in this course, or what this course is all about in a nutshell. Then we'll talk about some of the important aspects. All right, any questions before I start? Again, there's no serious and silly question. Any question can be asked at any time. And by the way, I'm not paying attention to the chat window. If yeah, so it's better to ask directly. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can
yes,
hear.
Yeah, because someone said they can't hear. All right, cool. Okay, shall I proceed now? Okay, I take it as an S. Okay, so what's this course about? and at a very high level. Okay, bird's eye view. So first of all, understand what's this cloud all about. Okay, the concepts of public cloud. Dive deep into the AWS global infrastructure and the breadth and width of the services. So what does AWS global infrastructure comprises of, and what are the various services, and what are their use cases? Okay, we'll learn that, and we'll master some of the key AWS services. Okay, um, remember, I have highlighted the term key and services because there are about 200 services in AWS and no one can be an expert in all of those things. Okay, but this course is aimed at making you all comfortable in the most commonly used services. Okay, and which require the most administration as well. Okay, we'll cover that as we go along in this demo, what services we kind of dive deep into and what services we kind of understand from a theoretical perspective. And the last one, of course, is to gain insights into various services offered by AWS and their use cases. So these are the services where we might not do anything hands-on, we might not dive deep into it, but we'll understand what is the use case of each of these services, and what is their applicability, and uh, how are they used. Okay, how are they consumed by other services. That's at a very very high level, but don't worry. I mean, it might appear like there's nothing in this course, but we'll discuss what is covered in detail. Okay, so moving on. So before we start about what we shall cover in this course in detail, let's understand a few concepts. Okay, so that you understand what I know and you can make a judgment about this course. So first of all, let's talk about cloud. So, can someone tell me what do you understand by the term cloud in terms of computing? Okay, the floor is open. Anyone can, you know, answer. So, what does cloud computing exactly mean, or I mean, cloud computing mean? Never heard of the term cloud?
Yeah, we have heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Central location where processing can take place.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, that's about it. Where it is normally the program is not when you access the data, it is not restricted to a location,
Mm-hmm.
and the files could be spread out, the environment could be spread out, but that is behind the scenes. It is
Right. Right.
transparent to you. So that is what is cloud computing.
Exactly. Yeah. You summed it really well. In fact, when Jeff Bezos and others are planning to launch these services, they wanted to name it as Internet OS. Okay, in a way, I mean, your answer is towards that. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see what it is all about. So this is the Wikipedia definition. So cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computing resources, especially data storage and computing power, without direct active management by the user. Okay, so let's understand this part. Okay, is the on-demand availability of computer system resources, data storage, especially data storage and computing power. Okay, so what does this on-demand availability of computing resources? Okay, let's understand that part. Okay, if you remember back in the day, when I say back in the day, at least like uh, 10 years ago, if you have to go to airport using any taxi, you have to call them one day in advance. I'm talking about Indian scenario. Okay, you had to call them one day in advance, like you had Z cabs and Sky cabs, and tell them that okay, tomorrow 11 o'clock I need to start from my home to airport. Okay, because I have a flight at 3 o'clock or whatever it is. So can you come by 10:45? So the usual answer would be from this Skycaps operator. There would be a call center guy. He would say that, listen, tomorrow 11 a.m. we are not available. What I can do is I can give you a cab at 11:30 if that's okay, or I can give you one at 9:30. So here you have to make a choice. Either take the risk of going late or go early and mm, spend some time in the airport. But fast forward to, like, let's say 2013 or 2014, when you have these Uber and Ola services started. You don't have to book these cabs one day in advance, right? You just log into your mobile phone, you just open the app, and you enter the destination just 10 or 15 minutes before you want to leave, and get started, and it comes in the next 10 minutes, and you you're ready. Okay, that's the on-demand availability, just like you wanted it and you got it. Okay, and another important point is without active direct management by the user. This is another important aspect. Okay, this could mean different things, but just again think about the same scenario, right? In the first scenario, you have to uh, call this operator, and there is one person from the the cab providers end. The Skycab's call center guy will answer the call. In case of Ola or Uber, there is no other person. There is only an app you're talking to. You're only interacting with a software, and that is telling you whether cabs are available or not. Okay, in a way, that's what it means without direct active management by the user. Okay, and also it also means that you're not managing the cab. Someone else is managing the cab. All that you're doing is asking them to come and pick you up. Okay, so the term cloud is generally used to describe data centers available to many users over the internet. So it's all about data centers available to other users. Okay, so to give you an example, back in the day, let's say, when I say back in the day, before the advent of cloud, public cloud, if you have to start an application, let's say you are a developer, you have a very good idea about developing a website. Okay, so you have written the code, you have tested it on your laptop, it's working fine. You also shared with your friends on their local laptops, and they said it's really looking good. Then you decided to go public, meaning create a website like mybeautifulwebsite.com or whatever it is, and you want to go to the public. Then what you need to do is you have to first buy some physical servers. Okay, so physical servers are, right, they are like computers only. Those come in like boxes and shapes, and you have to install them at your home. You have to have at least 2 power sources. Okay, meaning you cannot always rely on your regular power supply, right? They can go down anytime, and your application should never go down when you're making it a public website, right? So at least you have to have a power backup, like like an inverter or a generator or whatever it is. And also you need to have 2 network connectivities, because let's say you have Airtel or Vodafone broadband, but that goes down, then your website will not be accessible for others. So you need to create redundant power backup. Okay, so yeah, let's see. So a server is required first of all, and servers don't come cheap. They are expensive, in fact. Okay, a single server might cost you anywhere between 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakhs. Okay, and so this will have multiple power sources. Okay, when I say multiple power sources, it could be your regular power connection as well as your generator or an inverter, and then you will have multiple network connectivities. So you have already Airtel, but you cannot always rely on them. They can go down anytime. Not only Airtel, any service can go down, right? So you will have an alternate service like Act or HighReach. In the case of US, it might be AT&T and Verizon, something like that. Okay, so even before you start your website, you have to spend at least 2 lakhs on your 2 lakhs on your server, and you need to spend money on buying an additional power source like an inverter or a generator, and you need to invest money into subscribing to a new internet connection. Okay, and if your website clicks and there are more people coming in, more demand is coming in, you have to buy a new server. Okay, but let's say after 2 months your website got kind of crashed in the sense people are not coming to your website. They have lost interest in your website. Okay, then you bought already 2 lakhs, 2 lakhs, 4 lakhs of investment, and power sources. Maybe you have to put some cooling sources and all these things, because servers run 24/7. They get heat they get heated really fast. So you have to put a power cooling solution. Okay, you have put all this money, but within 2 months your website is not working as expected. You're running a lot of power bills and network cable, the network connectivity bills, internet bills, but there is no return on investment. Then you will have to shut down. Okay, so but look at the cloud situation. You have an idea, you want to build a web application, you have written a beautiful code, you have tested it, and then you've shown it to your friends, they're interested. Then you don't have to do any, then you wanted to host it somewhere. Okay, so when you wanted to host it, you don't have to do anything. You just need to create an account in, let's say, AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform, any service you want to, and you can directly create a web server. I mean, you can create a virtual machine there and start installing your software and make it available to the public. Okay, so there is this thing called as no upfront cost. One of the important thing about um, cloud is there is no upfront cost, meaning you don't have to spend any money at the beginning to start your application. Okay, let's say you began with one VM with 8 GB RAM and 4 cores of CPU, or let's say two VMs with each one having 4 GB and 4 cores of CPU to begin with, and you will not have to pay any money to AWS to start using these servers. Okay, you will only pay once. Let's say you started using them, two VMs, and after 20 days the load has increased, and let's say you think, okay, two VMs are not enough, now you want to make it as four VMs, four virtual machines. Okay, virtual machines are also nothing but servers, we'll talk about that later, and same capacity, each of them is same capacity. One VM has 4 GB of RAM and 4 CPUs, or 4 cores as we call them. So let's say one VM per day costs you $10. So for the first 10 days you're running at $20 into 10 days. Okay, and you're not paying it immediately, you'll pay at the end of the month. And for the rest of the 10 days, okay, 40 into 10 into 40, because each server is costing you $10, and for the next 20 days you're paying $40. Okay, so at the end of the month your bill will be $60. Okay, so this is what we call as pay as you use, meaning you'll pay for only the amount of resources you're spending. Let's say after 20 days your demand has stabilized and you thought 4 VMs is a overkill, only 3 VMs would be enough. Okay, so then you say, okay, I don't want 4 VMs, I'll just use 3 VMs. Then 3 into 10, 30 into 10 days, right? So sorry, not 60, 200 plus 400 plus 300, how much is that? $900, right? So you're paying $900 at the end of the month, supposing your demand is so high. Okay, can you all hear me? I just do this test because sometimes due to network connectivity or whatever.
Yes.
Yes, we are able to hear.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so this is what we call as pay as you use. So one thing is no upfront cost. Second thing is you'll pay only for how much you spend. Okay, let's flip this scenario. Let's say this is one case scenario, best case scenario. Okay, your load is increasing and stabilizing. The other case scenario, let's say you started with let's say you started with 4 VMs because you're ambitious. You thought you're going to make a big hit, and people are going to love it, and you're going to be a big hit. But what happened, unfortunately, the demand is not so high, so you have to cut down to 3 VMs. Eventually you cut down to 2 VMs, and after 25th day, let's say there are no people coming at all, and you thought you brainstormed with your friends and your other peers and thought, okay, maybe it's time to take a break from this one. Maybe the website is not completely ready, you want to rebuild it, you want to take some time off and do that. So in that case, you decided to say, okay, I'll delete all these VMs because no one is coming, I need to hire some marketing team or whatever, so till then I will not do anything. So now the bill would be here $400, $300. I mean, this is very exaggerated number. You will not have that. You will not have to pay that much per day for this kind of machine. But yeah, just for simplicity. So here you are only paying $700, and you don't have any dead investment. In the earlier case, when you bought 2 servers, spending whatever money, okay, whatever the amount of money you have spent, that is a dead investment, right? You have to store it in a you need to have storage to save it, and till the time you go for a new website, or even if you don't know, you will come back to this website or not, because you started this as a hobby. Okay, so in that case, that investment is dead. Here, after 25 days, after 30 days, you'll get the bill for $700. You pay it and forget it. Okay. Yeah, $700 is a very exaggerated number. You'll not have to pay $10 for this kind of machines, but just giving an example. All right. So this is how you pay as you use, meaning you'll pay only for the amount of time you use and only for the type of virtual machines you use. If you reduce your capacity, for example, by 2 GB and 2 cores, for instance, you'll only pay, instead of $5 per day, $10 per day, you'll pay only $5 per day. Okay. So your billing is adjusted as per your usage. Okay, and you can shut down machines anytime, you can delete virtual machines anytime, so that when I say delete, you're removing it from your account, so that you will not be billed for it. Okay, so these are very important advantages when you are going to cloud. What is that? One thing is no upfront cost, and second thing is pay as you use. Okay, this is all good. This will apply also to enterprise customers. Okay, to large customers, not only a single user or a developer who wants to host his website. These things hold good for an enterprise customer also. For example, when Flipkart started, okay, if they wanted to if they had to buy their own servers, meaning they will have to first take a big chunk of land to build their data center. Second thing, they have to buy a lot of servers, use the power connectivity cables and whatnot, a lot of things, and then hire people to maintain that data center. We are not even talking about software, we are talking only about the hardware. Okay, on top of it, you will have to buy network engineer, you have to hire network engineers and other people to maintain all these things, security and all that stuff. So that itself would have costed them some millions of money, or even billions of rupees, and they would not have, not billions, maybe millions of rupees, and they would not have started anywhere. Okay, but thanks to cloud, all they needed to do is hire some software engineers. Okay, if they already, I think they already had the plan of how to prepare an e-commerce website, so they did not have to really worry about spending millions of rupees on infrastructure. They directly took a subscription on AWS, they started hosting their application on AWS, and they've become an instant hit. Not only that, once they became an instant hit, and they started these things like big billion day sale and all that, right? So on those days, that lot of customers are coming to your application to access your website or your app. So on the days, you need to scale up really fast. Maybe let's say on usual days, let's say Flipkart maintains 40 web servers. Just giving a random numbers, okay? I don't mean they have these many servers. They could have a lot more. 40 app servers and let's say 60 DB servers, and 20 other servers like caching servers or analysis services and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so if on a big billion day, right, generally let's say uh, their demand is like 10 users per minute. Okay, but on big billion day, let's say you're anticipating 100 users per minute, because you have a lot of offers and you have used your marketing team to spread the word wide using newspaper ads or TV ads and everything, and you're expecting 100 users per minute, meaning you will have to make all these servers into 10 times. Okay, imagine in physical situation, in the old situation when people are maintaining their own servers, if you have to get these many servers, you will have to put orders to HP or Dell, whoever is supplying these servers, at least 6 months in advance. Okay, but thanks to cloud, you can just within one day or even less than that, you can spin up how many ever servers you need, Okay, in fact, if you have right code, if you have right automation, you can go from 440 to 400 servers in a matter of a few minutes or a few hours. Okay, so that's what we call it as rapid elasticity. Rapid elasticity. You can grow very fast. You can scale up and scale down. So after big billion day running for 3 days, you know that the demand will come down because the offers have come down. Now you have to go back to, let's say, but you know that the demand has increased from earlier. Earlier it was 10 users per minute. During the big billion days, it started with 100 users per day and gradually it decreased to 70 users per day, per minute. Sorry. So eventually, based on this, also you can cut down on your load. Let's say finally it went down to from 10 users to, because new users have joined. Now the request has the number of users have gone for 15 users per minute. In that case, what you will do, from 400 you will go back to not 40 but 50. Okay, and also for these 400 servers you're not paying additional amount in advance. Okay, uh, you're just paying only for these 3 days for these 400 servers. If that is not the case, if you have to buy physical servers in the old situation, what happens? You will have to spend money for these 400 servers and keep them idle till your next big business day. Okay, so that's a lot of waste of money, right? So this is what we call as resource allocation and reallocation. Okay, so you can instantly get some servers and also instantly decrease the number of servers, and you will be charged only per those amount of time. In fact, AWS has started something called as per second billing, meaning you will be billed per seconds. So if you have used a server for 1 hour, 20 minutes and 40 seconds, you will be charged only for this much, 1 hour, 20 minutes and 40 seconds, not even 1 second greater than that. Okay, so that's again measured billing. You have measured billing as well. Okay, these are some of the advantages of using cloud. You get a clear picture of what you're spending on what. Is there a question? Okay, so those are the important aspects of cloud. Okay, so but at the end of the day, what this cloud is, what if I told you there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer? Okay, meaning cloud means that's nothing some fancy thing. Okay, it's just that instead of using your own servers, you're using Amazon's AWS web servers or Microsoft's Azure servers or Google's GCP servers. Okay, so this is how cloud in physical world looks like. It's like a big data warehouse where you have all these servers and network cables, all these things. Okay, this is just one of the examples of a data center, okay, maintained by AWS. I got from internet. So in acres of land, you have these huge buildings which are constantly cooled by using some liquids and some air conditioning and constantly secured through various people. Okay, so this is how cloud in reality looks like. I mean, inside that you have a lot of servers. Okay, so cloud is nothing but a collection of data centers managed by someone else, not by you. Earlier, let's say if you take even today, if you take the examples of JPMC or Citibank or any big financial organizations, they still have these data centers maintained in various places in the world, like UK, US, Japan. Okay, now what happened? Instead of they managing their servers, you have Amazon or Microsoft managing them for you, and you just uh, use how many ever servers you want to use, and if you don't want to use, you just deallocate them, meaning you delete from your account and you're done. Okay, that's what it really is. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics of cloud computing which you already discussed. On demand self-service, meaning just like Ola and Uber, you don't have to call someone or raise a ticket to get your servers. You can simply go to a website or use some programming and create whatever servers, whatever disks, whatever file storages, whatever you want to create, you can create using self-service. Broad network access, meaning these services should be available across the internet using a wide range of tools like browser or mobile clients or even programmable ways. That's what broad network access means. Multi-tenancy and resource pooling. So this is a very important concept. Okay, so today let's say I have a company called as XYZ Corp and you have a company called as ABC Corp. Okay, so I create my resources in, let's say, Mumbai region. AWS has a region in Mumbai, and you also create your resources in Mumbai. But my resources and your resources are never, though they are created from the same data center, you cannot see my resources, I cannot see your resources. When I say resources, I mean to say resources like your virtual machines or storage disks or database servers. Okay, each of them are isolated from each other. That's what multi-tenancy means. Different users can create their own tenancies. It's as if they're isolated from the other one. And resource pooling. So resource pooling is like, today I'm using 100 servers, and tomorrow I think of reducing it to 80 servers because my load has come down. Okay, so when I release these 20 servers back to AWS, these 20 servers can be taken by someone else. Okay, but for him, it's as if he's creating 20 new servers. Okay, so this is what called as resource pooling. So AWS or any public cloud, through their intelligent coding and all that, make sure that the same resources are used by different people, but every one of them, they get their own access control, they get their own data control, so that one person cannot see other person's data no matter what. Okay, that's what resource pooling is. You use a common share of resources. These are shared across multiple tenants in the sense multiple customers, but each of them cannot see the other person's resources. And we already talked about rapid elasticity and scalability, meaning you can scale up to hundreds of machines in a matter of minutes. And also scalability, like there is a feature like, based on the load, the servers go up or come down, number of servers increase or decrease. And also think of another scenario. Okay, so let's say you are an enterprise, you are a e-retail customer like Flipkart. After some days, initial days, let's say to 2010 and all those days, you started and you're doing well, but you're still not able to catch up to your competitors. Back then the competitors were Snapdeal and Amazon was already there, of course. So you're not able to understand what's your problem. Are you not showing the right cases? Are you not showcasing the right products in your application? Or are you not marketing it well? Or why are the users not coming to? So you thought you want to run an analysis surveys on all the users who are logging into your computers, and how much time they are staying and what kind of pages they are staying. Then let's say you need to run a machine learning module which needs a computer like this big. When I say big, not in physical size, but in specs. Let's say you need a computer which needs 100 cores of CPU and at least 1 terabyte of RAM to run only for 1 hour every month to get all the information about your users. Okay, but imagine buying such a big computer. First thing, you cannot buy such a big computer. You have to combine 4 or 5 computers to make it this big. Okay, of course you might even get these kind of computers also, but if you have to buy that, maybe you'll have to spend some millions of rupees, but you're using only per 1 hour every month. But it will not run on any other small computers because it's a huge machine learning program which requires advanced, let's say this also requires GPUs are nothing but graphical processing units or video cards. Okay, so if you have to run this analysis, imagine buying this physical server and putting in a big room in your data center and cooling it and all that, but only running it for 1 hour every month. Instead, on cloud, you can immediately provision one such virtual machine and use it for 1 hour and shut it down or delete it, and you will be billed only for this 1 hour. And whenever you want to run it again, you can again create a new one. Okay, of course your data can be stored somewhere else in the sense within the cloud only. So that's what we mean rapid elasticity and scalability. So it can scale up to very, very high proportions. And measured service, this is very important. I told you, right? So the billing is per second, in some cases it's per minute. So you know what you're spending on. Okay, in your traditional data center, when your organization itself is maintaining its own servers, you cannot really calculate what are you spending your money on. For example, your data center bill comes to like $100 million per month, but you cannot say like which service has used so much of resources. Okay, I mean, you could still create some tools, but that's very not out of the box. You have to do a lot of coding and you have to spend a lot of money on that. But in case of cloud, it is right out of the box. Once you subscribe to a cloud subscription, you will every month you will get a clear bill saying that you have spent so much money on VMs for this region, you have spent so much money. I mean, your bill is so much for the storage hard drives on so much on for this region. And you could also use a thing called as tags. You can tag your resources, you can list your resources based on their business. I mean, you might have 10 different applications, so you can tag each resource as per the application. And you can also get bill. For example, application A virtual machines cost you like 10 $50. Application B servers cost you $25. So everything can be you'll get very detailed billing of every service you used, just like your postpaid telephone bill, right? When you look at your postpaid telephone bill, it will tell you like to whom you have made so many calls, and how many SMS you have sent, how much data you have used. Similarly, every cloud provider gives you all these features like measured service. Okay, so those are the important characteristics of cloud computing. Okay, so if any provider doesn't meet any of these requirements, he cannot be called as a cloud provider. He could be called as a hosting provider or something else, but these are the important characteristics of cloud computing. I know I went on a monologue, so open for questions now. No questions? All right, let's move on. So if you look at any infrastructure, be it on-premise in the sense when the companies manage their own data centers, or be it cloud, they are basically divided into these three components: compute, storage, and network. Why am I telling you this? Because when you understand cloud, you need to understand these three concepts. Compute is nothing but your computers, like virtual machines or physical machines. Storage is where you store your data. These could be hard drives or file storages. When I say file storages, it could be something like your Google Drive. Okay, and network, the very important aspect is network. You have different physical servers or virtual machines, and you have data drives and databases. How do you connect all these things? You need networking components. Okay, you need physical cables that connect one another. But for us, we don't see any physical cables when using cloud, but we still need to understand the concepts of networking. Okay, what is a virtual network? How do we divide a network into multiple subnetworks? All these things we have to understand. Okay, these are the key elements of any IT infrastructure. And also there are different types of cloud services. Okay, so we talked about what are the characteristics of cloud services. Now let's see what are the different types of cloud services. This is very, very important for you to understand. So we have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. In the case of infrastructure as a service, users manage everything from virtual infrastructure, not physical infrastructure, and code. In the sense that you will rent some resources from AWS, okay, and you will start using them. So let's say you're renting 10 virtual machines from AWS, and you are using, and the operating system will be preloaded. Of course, you can either choose a Windows machine or a Linux machine, but once you take the virtual machine, it's your responsibility to maintain the upgrades. Okay, time to time, your operating system will require upgrades, right? You will get patches from Microsoft or Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or wherever your whatever your operating system is. Even Ubuntu has its own updates. If you don't update them, your servers will be vulnerable to attacks, meaning people will come and attack your servers. So you have to take responsibility of all these things. And then let's say you're using these 10 servers, out of which 5 servers you're using for web servers. In that case, you have to make sure you have to install the latest version of Apache or Nginx or whatever web service you are trying to use. And let's say another 3 servers you're using for app servers. then you want to install something like WebSphere or Tomcat. So it's your responsibility to install the dependent softwares to run your code. Okay, your developers will develop the code, but for the code to run on these virtual machines would need some additional software. For example, if your developers are developing Java applications, before their code is uploaded onto the servers, you need to make sure the servers already have Java software pre-installed on that. So all that things will be taken care by you. You will not maintain the physical infrastructure, meaning you will not maintain the data center and all that, but the operating system upgrades, and the application installations, any prerequisites, everything is taken care by you. Okay, that is infrastructure as a service. Common examples are EC2 instances or virtual machines, AWS virtual machines, or you have Azure virtual machines, and virtual private cloud provided by uh, Azure and EBS, Elastic block storage. Okay. So what are the advantages of IaaS? You have full control over your virtual machines. So you can decide which version of operating system you want to run, which version of Java you want to run. Everything is in your control. And of course, you will deploy your code also. But the negative side is high management overhead. You need people specifically to administer these servers, to maintain these servers, to make sure these are always up to date. Okay, that's infrastructure as a service. Typically, virtual machines, hard disks, virtual private cloud or virtual networks, all these are part of infrastructure as service. The second type of cloud service is platform as a service. Here, users manage only the code. The underlying infra is maintained by cloud provider. What does it mean? Let's say you are a very good Java developer. You have a beautiful idea to develop a website. Okay, but you're not the infra guy. You don't like to set up virtual machines. You don't like to install Java yourself. You just need a place where you can directly upload your code, and it can become a website, and you can share the link to others. Okay, so platform as a service is like that. You just upload your code to the cloud, and it will take care of all the underlying aspects like infrastructure, the operating system, and the runtimes required. Runtime is nothing but a prerequisite software. As I told you, when you write any code in Java language, you also need to install the Java software on the virtual machines. In the case of platform as a service, all these things will be taken care by the cloud provider. Okay, you just need to upload the code, and give your configuration details. Where is your database, what is the admin login and password, all these things, and it will take care of the deployment part and everything. So that's why platform as a service, these are called as developer services. Okay. So in this case, you will only worry about dev activity in the sense development activity. You don't have to worry about operations activity, like patching the operating system, installing Java. All these things are not your worry. But what is the negative side? Less control over infra. You cannot decide which version of operating system you want to use, because that is decided by cloud provider. Maybe you can get to choose the operating system type like Windows or Linux, but more than that, it doesn't give you much control. Okay, you don't know which version of Java it is running on. Okay, so that's the platform as a service option. One of the common examples is Elastic Beanstalk provided by AWS. Okay, and also platform.sh is another company which lets you directly upload your code, and they will deploy the application for you. The third one, and very commonly used, we all use it in one way or the other way, is known as software as a service. In fact, I am right now using that service only. When I'm using GoToMeeting, I'm not maintaining the software, I'm not maintaining the infrastructure. Everything is maintained by GoToMeeting. I'm just logging into it. Okay, so the organization Career IT has created an account for me, and they said, please log into this account. They have also given you the same thing. So you're just clicking on that link and connecting. Career IT is not maintaining, I'm not maintaining, you're not maintaining any software or infrastructure. We are directly using this service. Or Google Drive or Google Mail is also an example of software as a service. You don't bother about the software, you don't bother about the hardware. Everything is maintained by a cloud provider or a service provider. Okay, so on an enterprise level, think about these things, right? Let's say you are a auditing company, but time and again you need your folks to be trained in technology, or you need your trains to be trained in auditing courses and all these courses. So your core business is auditing, but you need learning site, a learning management site where everyone can learn in your organization. And also maybe you will need some periodic reports that how many users have completed a particular course. But you don't want to spend money on developing a new website. So then what you can do is you can go to um, websites like Udemy or Pluralsight or even LinkedIn Learning and tell them, hey, give me, I want to buy your subscription for 10,000 users. Okay. And all of these users need just read-only access, or let's say whatever access. Okay. Just reader access. And a few people would need maintainer access, because you need some people to give them access to these sites, right? And you'll say that I also want to be able to upload courses that are available only to my people. So internally you should be also able to upload some courses which your own team prepares. So in this case you can go for providers like Saba or LinkedIn Learning. So they will say that, okay, let's say your XYZ Corp. Okay, XYZ Corp, we have created a link for you which is called as xyzcorp.linkedinlearning.com. Log into that one with this admin credentials, and you can add users whoever you want to, and they will be able to access those services. Okay, so that is software as a service, where you don't have control over anything, but there is no management overhead. Okay, meaning you don't have to manage anything, everything is managed by those companies, right? That is software as a service. Every organization use some kind of SaaS in one form or the other form. Okay, very common example is Gmail. Of course, Gmail, not only for the personal use, for the enterprise use also, Gmail is a SaaS service. Or Office 365, for instance, where you log into a web page to access your office utilities, or Google Drive, for instance, and GitHub, where you store your code. That's also a SaaS example. Understood? So these three are different types of services that are available in the market. Okay, for our course, we are going to focus on IaaS, because of course we'll understand about various PaaS services from AWS perspective, but IaaS is this service where you need maximum amount of management. Remember, these are the services where you have maximum control, you need maximum work also. PaaS, not much of work, but you need to understand some concepts. SaaS, again, there's nothing to do. You just log into and use it. So we don't learn SaaS concepts. Okay. But we'll focus primarily on IaaS, infrastructure as a service kind of services. IaaS services. Okay. Questions? No questions? All right. So now let's jump into the main thing that we are here for, Amazon Web Services. So what is this Amazon Web Services? So Amazon Web Services is the leader in the public cloud computing domain. Okay. So if you take the public cloud, AWS is the undisputed leader. We'll see why also. Okay. So AWS was launched in March 2006 with this service called as Simple Storage Service. So Simple Storage Service is something like your Google Drive, where you can directly upload your files and share it with your friends or colleagues. Okay. And in August the same year, they launched Elastic Cloud Compute. Elastic Cloud Compute is nothing but the virtual machines on rent from AWS. Okay, you can access AWS resources, AWS virtual machines through EC2. That's it was also launched in the year 2006 itself. Remember, this is one of the important. This might be one of the important questions for your AWS cloud practitioner or AWS even solutions architect associate as well. Which services started began? It was which service was the first service launched by AWS? It is S3, or Simple Storage Service. Okay, so if you look at AWS today, as of 2021, AWS comprises 200 products and services, which include compute, storage, networking, database analytics, deployment management, mobile, developer tools, and tools for the IoT. IoT is nothing but Internet of the Things. You might have heard about it, right? Like your smart bulbs, smart fridges, or even tools which can control which the tools in your automobile devices. Okay, all these are Internet of Things kind of things. So look at the growth of AWS. Okay, in 2017 they had 17.46. By the end of 2020 the number had grown to 46 billion, almost 2.5 times within this short period of 3 years. Okay, no wonder Jeff Bezos was the richest person, but now I think Elon Musk has overtaken him. But I think, anyways, Jeff Bezos is going to come back again.
He came back
So
already.
he did. Okay, cool. Not cool. Yeah. Anyway, what happened? The billionaires coming back, but nothing happens to us. Anyway, that's a different concept. Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is the amount of yeah, this is the amount of growth we are talking about. Okay, so from 2017 to 2020, he has almost grown. I mean, only AWS has grown by 2.5 times, 250%. That means, okay. So even today, with so many competitors around, AWS has around 30% of public cloud market share. Okay, so after the of the total IaaS and PaaS market, not talking about the SaaS market. Okay. SaaS market is a different game altogether, because you might have very simple sites like not simple sites, but very commonly used sites like Zoho Payroll, or all your payroll services. All of them are also SaaS providers. Okay, so not taking into that consideration, only IaaS and PaaS. If you see, AWS has 30% of public cloud market share, whereas Microsoft has just 18% and Google has 9% respectively. Of course, Microsoft and Google are also growing, but not as fast as, but AWS has already captured the market share, because AWS has begun in 2006, whereas Microsoft has begun in 2010, and initially they had a lot of challenges. Google has begun around the same time, 2010 or 2011, but they also took time to pick up. Okay, and among the notable customers, NASA, Netflix are one of the very notable among those customers. Okay, I mean, even NASA and Netflix, the scale of Netflix infrastructure, or even many of the in fact US Navy is also using AWS in some capacity. Okay, and even many of the Indian retail chains like Flipkart, these people are also using AWS services. Okay, so if you look at the state of the competition, if you look at the growth, others have been growing very well, but look at the AWS growth in the Q3 2019. They are 33%. In Q2 2020 they have grown 31%. In Q3 2020 they have grown at 32%. Okay, look at Microsoft. It's also fluctuating between 17, 20 and 19%. And this is the percentage of growth, not the market share. Okay, um, so if you look at this one, and the others are growing very well. Others in the sense, you have DigitalOcean, you have other platform as a service, like I told you, right? Platform.sh, you have Acquia and all these things for PHP applications. So they are also growing well. Okay, Alibaba is also coming into picture quite well. Okay, so now AWS infrastructure. I told you, right? There is nothing like cloud. It is someone else's computers. So these are the locations where AWS has its computing resources, or all those data centers. So primarily focused in the US and Europe, and once we have Mumbai in India, um, and it's growing up faster. Okay, they have announced another region in India. I think it's in Hyderabad. They're coming. Is it in Hyderabad? Yeah, I think they're coming up in close to Hyderabad. Another data center is coming up. Okay, so these are the various regions within. I mean, in the world where AWS has its data centers. And when I say data center, it's not these are regions, not data centers. Sorry. So each of these regions has multiple data centers. Okay. For example, when they create one in Hyderabad, they don't just create one data center. They create one data center in, let's say, Uppal, and they create another data center in Patancheru. Sorry if you're a non-Hyderabadi. These are two different regions. Okay, so why they do that? So that even if one data center is affected because of floods or some riots or whatever it is, the other data center is still operating and your region is not going down. Okay, so there was a nice interactive diagram by website by AWS. They have taken it off. I don't know why. Uh, Let me see once again if that is available. That gives you a very nice 3D effect. Infrastructure.aws. I think they have moved it. Yeah, let me try in Chrome. If it is data infrastructure.aws. No, they have removed that website. That was a very wonderful website. Okay, so yeah, this is region wise. You can see the different details. Anyway, so that's the state of that's the AWS infrastructure, how it is spread across globally. Okay, if you come to the numbers, they have 80 availability zones, meaning 80 different data centers across 25 geographic regions. Meaning in US East, they have 6 data centers called as availability zones. Availability zone is nothing but a data center or a collection of data centers within one particular one particular large complex. Okay, like your godowns. Okay, huge godowns of data centers. Okay, and 15 more availability zones announced, including one in India, a couple of in India, Australia, and various other places. Okay, and in terms of infrastructure spread, Azure also says it is there in 140 regions, but it's not as effective as Azure. Sorry, AWS. Okay, right. So that's about AWS. Now let's see what we are going to cover in our course in detail. Okay. Okay. So before I go there, any questions on AWS? Okay, so this is the curriculum for our class, our batch. So this is what we are going to cover, meaning these are again high level headings. So in the IT architecture, so the first of all, we need to understand before even we start what is a cloud or what is AWS, we need to understand the IT architecture. So what is three-tier architecture? What is n-tier architecture? How does the IT networking works? Because no matter whether it's AWS, Azure, or even own data center, you need to understand some of these concepts. I mean, all of these concepts like networking concepts. How do you create networks and subnets? Okay, and then you need to understand about a little bit about virtualization. You need not go deep dive. And IP addressing. How do you understand IP address? What is a public IP, private IP? All these things are required because without that you cannot administer any infrastructure. Forget about cloud. Okay, then we will talk about AWS account administration. How do you manage an AWS account? So how do you create your own AWS account? Okay, what are the various services? What is organization? What is and how does billing work? All these things we'll cover in the AWS account administration. Then we'll talk about identity and access management. So how do you IAM or identity and access management is an important aspect in any scenario, cloud or on-premise data center also. So here we talk about what is how do you create users in AWS, how do you assign them roles, how do you create in groups, what is a policy, what is an instant profile, all these things we'll dive deep, and you'll also do practicals on these things. The next part is storage. So we'll understand simple storage service. This is very important aspect of AWS. We'll understand various properties of S3, the lifecycle management, and then we'll talk about Glacier. Glacier is another kind of storage service. Okay, I mean same as S3 but with different kind of storage options. Then we have EFS or Elastic File System. Okay, so this is another important aspect. This will let us understand how you can create a file share that can be shared by multiple virtual machines at the same time. Okay, then we'll understand the networking concepts. Very important, right? We have to see how are the networks defined within the AWS. So These are managed by us again. Okay, so we create a virtual private cloud, which is nothing but a virtual network. We create subnets, gateways, like internet gateway, NAT gateway. We talk about security groups. Don't worry if you don't understand any of these things. We'll talk about them in detail. Access control list, web access firewall, and also DNS in AWS Manager. Okay, that's from the network side. And from the compute side, very important aspect again, we talk about EC2 or Elastic Cloud Compute Cloud, which is nothing but virtual machines. EBS, nothing but hard drives, Elastic Block Storage. We'll talk about AMI, Amazon Machine Images. We'll talk about load balancing, auto scaling groups, and the corresponding topics related to each of these things. Okay, what are the various types of servers you can rent on AWS? What is their billing? How do you make sure that you make them secure? Okay, how do you make sure you log into them? All these things we will cover in this section. And we'll talk about container services. Containers are coming up in the market real fast. Like, we'll understand what is Docker first, then we'll understand what is a Docker hub or Docker registry, then we'll understand ECR. ECR is nothing but Elastic Cloud Elastic Container Registry, and we understand ECS and EKS. EKS is Kubernetes Service. Okay, again, these are little advanced topics, so we'll kind of try to cover the theoretical aspects very importantly and do some practice as well. And databases, we'll understand about the various types of databases available. The important service is RDS service, and we'll also understand a bit about DynamoDB. I haven't mentioned here, but DynamoDB is also another kind of database services. We'll talk about them, and maybe we'll also create a couple of RDS instances to understand that. Okay, and these are application services. These are like PaaS services where you don't have to do much here. So we'll understand them from a theoretical perspective. What is a simple queue service? What is a simple notification service? What is Kinesis API gateway and other services? We'll just go through them. And automation, you understand all these services, but there should be a way you should be able to automate these services or get information about these services without actually um, logging into your portal, the website. Okay, so for that we'll understand AWS CLI, command line interface, and CloudFront. CloudFront is another tool, another service by AWS, which will let you create servers programmatically. Not only servers, any resource programmatically by writing code. Okay, and then we understand cloud best practices from AWS perspective. So AWS has this good documentation called as well architected framework, which tells what are the best practices you need to keep in mind when you're creating software on cloud, sorry, when you're creating your infrastructure on cloud. So we'll go through those documentation, and we'll also do a high availability setup. We'll install some servers, and we'll also talk about cost optimization. How can you optimize your cost? Okay, again, this is covered as part of well architected framework as well, but we'll also understand from a practical perspective. Okay, so this is the crux of this demo, what we are covering in this one. Okay, so that's why I'm showing the slide one again. Okay, so the first 3 to 4 days, or at least the first 3 days, we'll spend mostly on the basics of IT architecture. Then we'll talk about AWS account, then the identity and access management, and various other services within AWS. Okay, so like I told in the beginning itself, we'll gain mastery on some services. Some services we'll understand the theoretical aspect and the use case aspect. For example, EC2, VPCs, and all these things, load balancing, auto scaling, we'll do. We'll get a very good idea, including AWS CLI. Command line interface is another important tool, because tomorrow when you go for any job interviews, understanding all these services is one important aspect, but how do you automate creation of these services? So for that you need to understand CLI and also CloudFront. Okay,
are going to talk regarding cloud function.
your voice is breaking, sorry. Yeah, we'll do some exercises on cloud formation. Oh, sorry, yeah, this is cloud formation, not CloudFront, my bad. Yeah, I was doing it. Yeah, thanks. This is not CloudFront. CloudFront is another service. We'll talk about cloud formation. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
It's okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about CloudFront as well, but CloudFront, we'll just understand the concept, but CloudFormation we'll do practice as well.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, or shall I move on? Again, if required, we'll come back to this curriculum aspect. So what should you have to join this course? So based on many questions I get by people regularly, so I prepared this one. So you would need a computer, obviously, with system administrator rights, because you will need to install some software. Okay, it's good to have system administrator rights. Even if you don't have, I think we should be able to manage, but it's good to have. So at least 4 GB of RAM and an i3 or a quad core computer should be good. If you're not running Windows, lower version of this. If you're running Linux, lower version is also fine. Subscriptions, what kind of subscriptions you need? AWS free tier subscription. Just you can sign up with a debit card as well. You need not, I mean, you will not be build anything. Okay. Good thing about AWS is they offer 1 year free subscription. 1 year. Okay. So 1 year free subscription, but not all services. Some services will cost you money. You have to create them and delete immediately. Otherwise, your money will be exhausted, because they have some limit. Every month you can use only 750 hours of virtual machine, that to a basic machine. So if you're creating a high-end virtual machine, you have to immediately delete it. Or if you're creating 2 virtual machines, after some time delete them, because otherwise your bill will go up. I mean, we'll talk about all these things in the initial sessions. Don't worry about that. But you will not have to pay anything for AWS free tier subscription. Hello, can you all hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear.
Oh, sorry. I thought I missed. Okay. Um, yeah. So other services good to have. Maybe you want to manage your own code in GitHub for CloudFormation or AWS CLI. Not required. And if you want to understand some free concepts, there is a website called as Freenom. Freenom, which will help you to create free websites. Okay. For example, I can create a website called as kirankumar.tk, or not the .com addresses that will cost you money, but you'll get some extensions like, I mean, some domain names like kirankumar.ml or kirankumar008.ml, or whatever you want to create. Okay, so if you create a website, you will understand how you can connect with Route 53. I'll show them. Route 53 is nothing but DNS. Okay, how do you manage your website? So that's another free service. If you want to use for 3 months, you can get a free website. Okay, so I'd recommend that. And what software you need to install on your computer? You need to have Git Bash. Git Bash is nothing but a Git software, but it will also allow you to connect to Linux virtual machines from your Windows machines. If you already are using Linux machines or MacBooks, you don't have to install that thing as well. Or you can install another tool called as Putty or Putty, through which you can connect to Linux EC2 instances from your computer. Okay, AWS CLI, to learn AWS CLI from your own computer. Then if for writing CloudFormation and even AWS CLI commands, it's good if you have Visual Studio Code software. Okay, and from a personal perspective, what do you need to have? You need to have appetite for learning and quality time for participation in the class. Okay, meaning these classes are recorded, so after the class the recording will be sent to you. But if you join the class regularly and participate, in the sense ask questions, share your thoughts, it would be much more useful for you rather than listening to a recording. I know for the fact that once we I mean, every time we listen to recordings, halfway through the recording or even after 10 minutes we start looking at our phone. But in the class, I think it's slightly different. That's my opinion anyway. Maybe you could keep your phones away during the class. And active participation, what does that mean? Meaning asking me questions. Okay, sharing your thoughts, comments, or whatever you learned, or if you have done some practice yesterday, sharing about that. So all this is part of your active participation. So from the personal perspective, these three would be your important aspects. Skills. Okay, if you already know Linux or some sort of programming, it would be awesome. But even if you don't know any of those things, that itself is also not a hindrance in the sense, that's not a blocker, that's not a big deal. It would be great only. Okay, Yeah, we'll talk about some basic commands in Linux because we have to connect to EC2 instances and all that. But yeah, so that these are like prerequisites for this course. Okay. Again, this I prepared from the questions I get every time. Okay. Do you need to really be an expert programmer, or you need to know programming before joining the cloud course? No, not required. Again, as I said, if you know Linux, that's great. You can parallelly learn Linux, or you can learn it later, because because if I'm interviewing someone from for a cloud practitioner or a DevOps engineer role, okay, maybe the next logical step for you would be to go towards DevOps or cloud ops. So in either case, I would want this person to be good with operating systems, and Linux is the most popularly used operating system in enterprise servers. Okay, so yeah, that's one prerequisite, but yeah, again, not an hindrance. You can definitely learn it later also. Okay, so again, to sum up all this demo in one slide. So this course is designed both for freshers to IT industry, I mean. Also, you could be a fresher, meaning just out of the college, and also to those already working in IT in various other roles like, production support, or project management, or incident management, or any kind of roles. They could also join or quality assurance, okay, or even a developer also, and covers a gamut of AWS services and products. So it covers a wide area of services and products. This course aims to equip with you with the right amount of theoretical and practical knowledge. So you will get good amount of theoretical knowledge and the correct amount of practical knowledge as well. Okay. While this course offers a lot to learn and upskill, of course, it's your own enthusiasm, you're willing to learn and practice that takes your career to the next level. It's like a disclaimer. Okay, I'm saying that, okay, I'll do all I could do, but unless you participate actively, unless you show enthusiasm, the result might not be great. That's what it means in other words. All right, so open for questions, any kind of questions.
How many sections are you going to be here? Like 30 or 45 or 60?
uh, Sorry, could you repeat?
How many sections will be here?
Yeah, about 30 to 40, not more than that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kiran, this course content is sufficient for to pursue for the solution architect certification.
Solutions architect associate, yes. Or even a cloud practitioner, of course, you should be able to clear, but of course you will need to do some follow-up study material. Okay, because it's a MCQ, multiple choice questions exam, right? So there are a lot of other services. I mean, sometimes you get questions really on a mm, very very theoretical manner, though we will cover many of those well architected framework questions. You might still have to go through some of those white papers to get a in-depth idea, because my point in this course is not only for the certification, but also to prepare you well for the cloud practitioner role or cloud ops role. So for that, we'll do a lot of practicals in terms of the IaaS services like VPC and EC2. But from the exam perspective, after this course, you will have to do a little bit of study, at least for 10-15 days, on the different services and the best practices part, and the what do you call the architecture framework. What kind of scenario based questions there will be, some questions. So it's good if you pursue, I mean, if you go through some material after this course, but this will lay the right foundation for taking up CSA exam. CSA is Cloud Solutions Architect Associate exam. Professional is obviously tough. You have to be hands on to go to the professional course, but yeah, associate, definitely this will be the right foundation for you,
Okay,
and with
thank you,
some
thank you.
practice. Yeah. So I myself have not written any cloud certifications from AWS. I'm a certified Kubernetes administrator. Uh, but yeah, one day, I mean, this year I'm planning to do the solutions architect professional course. But from what I hear, Solutions Architect Associate is not that difficult. Okay, after this course, it will be much easier for you to attempt that exam.
So
Okay.
it will be an hour-long course every day, or and how many? I mean, how many days in the week? Will it be also on the weekend?
No weekends. No weekends. Only weekdays. Monday through Friday. 1 hour every day. Yes.
Okay. So it will be about 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. Let's make it as 5 to 6 would be more appropriate, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, because my way is not just the duration. My way is more about how much you are grasping, and I would definitely like you all to understand and ask me questions. And I don't care. I mean, I don't go by strict timelines. Like, I don't say, okay, EC2, I have to cover it in the 3 days itself. Even if it goes for 5 days, it's fine, as long as uh, you know you're asking the right questions and you're getting that right information. Okay, so yeah, I'm not very particular on the timelines. More focused on conveying the right information.
So I have to install any software on my laptop?
Yes, I told you, right? You have to install
Mm.
Git Bash or Putty to be able to connect to the cloud machines.
So only Putty is enough.
Yeah, more than Putty, I would prefer Git Bash, because that is also same, but it gives you a better interface than Putty.
Okay. I already have a Putty, so that is
Yeah.
and I cannot install anything more because I'm not a system admin on my laptop. But if I have
Okay.
Putty, I'm good enough. That's what is my question.
Yeah, if you have, if you can install AWS CLI, that is awesome. But if you can't, it's okay. What you can do is you can log into one of the EC2 Linux machines, and from there you can actually learn AWS CLI. That is fine. You might also have some kind of editor, right? Like Visual Studio Code or Atom, Notepad, anything like that. Notepad plus plus.
Notepad. Yeah,
Not even
Notepad.
Notepad plus plus. Ask your company if
Maybe
they
I
want
have.
to.
I mean,
Ask your IT team if they can install Visual Studio Code, because not only for this, tomorrow if you want to learn Linux or anything, Visual Studio Code is like good for Python or Bash or all these things. Okay, but yeah, not a constraint, not at all a constraint. You can do all these things in a Notepad also.
Okay.
And you don't have any network restrictions, right? Like you,
No
like you,
network.
meaning you cannot open GitHub or you cannot open this or that. If that's not there, that's
No.
fine. Yeah. Okay, then cool. Okay. Others, any questions? This is a good good number of participation, but very few questions.
So, are you starting from Monday? And that is what I understand from the chat thing. But are you starting from Monday or?
Yes, Monday.
Okay.
No, I did not get that question. All right, if you do not have any questions, thanks everyone for joining this. Thanks for you spending time on your weekend or a Friday evening if you're in the Northern American continent. And you all have a great weekend. Hoping to see you all on Monday. I'm still here
Okay.
if you
Thank
have
you very much.
questions. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Kiran.
Thank you. Revati, if you're trying to speak, I'm not able to hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I just unmuted. I just want
Okay.
to ask, like, the timings will be morning 5 to 6 or evening 5 to 6?
Is that 5 to 6 or 6 to 7?
No, no. You said the 5 to 6 in someone asked.
No. 5 to 6 weeks totally. It's
5
morning
to
6
6.
to 7. Yeah.
Morning 6 to 7. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one more thing, right now I'm from non-technical background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working in Amazon, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll take care of load balancer.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wanted to go for technical side, so I started taking AWS course.
Mm-hmm.
So will you suggest AWS is good to understand, or should I go to Linux and then after that I can come to AWS?
No. See, when you say managing load balancer, what exactly is your job role now?
Okay, mine is senior associate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there are Bangalore and Delhi and Mumbai. There will be some
Mm-hmm.
load given, forecast given to the hubs.
Okay.
So on the live dashboard, we will be, monitoring and putting offsets to
Okay.
reach
Okay. Okay.
100% to send that load.
Okay. So see, since you already are in this kind of role, this would definitely help you to gain the right technical knowledge, because if you want to practice Linux, first you need to understand how to create a Linux virtual machine, right? You need to understand how to connect to a Linux virtual machine. So if you join this course, you will understand all these things, and then after this course, you can spend 2 to 3 months on your own. Okay. And maybe I could suggest you some videos, and you could start learning Linux with the help of AWS. Okay. So once you this infrastructure is the base. If you understand infrastructure well, I mean the base well, then you on top of it you can learn operating system. Then on top of it you can learn containers and other stuff as well. So I think this would be a right place to start, and parallelly or even after the course, you could focus on Linux administration.
Okay. Um, I wanted to
Yeah, I
ask
would.
something, I forgot.
Okay.
Yeah. One more thing is, see, I am totally from non-technical background, so
Mhm.
I felt like you are little bit fast. So
No, this is just a demo. See, in the demo, I need to showcase all of you that I know a lot, right? So within this 1 hour, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I have to present a lot. But in classes, we'll go from the basics. Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes. So yeah, it will not be like too much overwhelming. I'll go from basics only. Okay. And you can
Yeah,
also always feel free to ask and stop and ask me to repeat. As I said, I'm not really constrained by timelines. What I want is to deliver a good material, and also help you to understand the concepts.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Kiran, bye, thanks,
Thanks,
and have a
Ravati. Have a
great
good
weekend.
weekend. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
too.
too. Bye.